So there's been a lot going on, and we'd be remiss if we do not talk at least a little bit about Israel and Palestine, as it is a major world event that is going on, and it is big yikes. And one of the things that I do want to talk about a little bit is less about like the facts of the matter of what's going on, and a little bit more about how people have socially responded to it. There has been
Mm-hmm.
quite the uproar in multiple different ways. One of which is that there are a whole lot of uh, Jewish peoples protesting the Israeli government, and they're getting in
Yep.
trouble in some places for doing so. Like to the point where they're getting like rounded up and carted off and told not to show up at pro-Palestinian um,
Yes. Yes.
protests for their
Yeah.
own safety. But the only people that are threatening them is that government.
Other protesters,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's the same thing as like, oh hey, don't smoke pot, it'll ruin your life. How's it gonna ruin my life? Because of what I'll do to you if you smoke pot. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you're just a dick.
So
Got it.
it's like the Palestinians have a right to like protest, but the other communities don't have
Well,
any right to protest. It's
the
like
Palestinians
this. If you
outside
want
of
to,
Palestine and Israel have a right to
Right,
protest.
right.
yeah. So
That's
yeah,
part of
the
the
thing is
problem.
that that's optically it's coming out like it is looking like it's hypocritical, if I might say, double standard. May I dare say? And you
To put
can
it
have two
mildly.
opposing sides like protest peacefully. You just have to limit the numbers. Tell them this is a venue, an isolated venue. Go and protest there. You want to face each other, go for it. But there will be no fighting, no throwing shit. As soon as that happens, you're getting dispersed,
Hmm.
and just
And
limit the number of people that can be there, so you can control them. Simple as that. It has
but
to
there
be
are
done by the
people
book sometimes.
who look to create trouble, not because they care about the
Of
issue,
course,
but because creating
January
trouble.
6th, everyone.
Yeah, and they go further. They might in fact be a shill for somebody else to say, well, if we can create trouble and destabilize society, we've done something. So they take advantage of disagreements. But I think the thing to and these kind of matters to keep in mind is that whenever you have military actions, people who are not military get killed, and
Yes.
sometimes in
Yes.
great numbers. One of the reasons why, you know, what are the bad things
There's a
about war?
reason. There's a reason the local populace, or you can say the normal people, do not like violence and do not like wars, because they know one day that war might knock on their own doorstep, and they don't
Yeah.
know how to deal with that. So yeah, it's yeah, I don't know what happened, like what, I still don't know. I haven't like looked into the facts, like who started what and from where, but the social media is getting so toxic that people are like now like bringing
So I
in
mean,
fake
it's
videos and pictures and all that stuff, and I'm just like, seriously, holy shit.
so there's. I mean, on the one hand, you can say that there's a very complicated history, and it goes back all the way to the British Mandate of Palestine and what Britain did with the British Mandate of Palestine
Mm-hmm.
following World War II, and
Mm-hmm.
they're basically granting of that land to Zionists. However, there's also a simpler sense in which you can say, okay, currently, Palestinians have no way to legally exit their territory.
Mm-hmm.
They also,
Mm-hmm.
and that includes, like just to move into some part of Israel, right? They have to get permission to do things like go to work in Israel. Um, Also, there have recently been numerous military encroachments into Palestinian areas, including um, part of the Palestinian Waqf, which is the religious trust which administers places like the Dome of the Rock. Twice in the past few months, various uh, Israeli civilians, backed by either police or military security forces, as well as one particular member of the Knesset, Benjamin Gvir, I believe his name is, have stormed into or onto the Temple Mount, disrupted the worshippers there, and then also said prayers, which is forbidden by the administration of the Temple Mount for them to do.
Is it Al
Also,
Aqsa Mosque? Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, the Temple Mount is where Al Aqsa Mosque is.
Yeah.
It's where
Okay.
the
Yeah.
Dome
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
Rock is as well, which is technically not the same thing,
Mhm.
but it's part of the same complex, so whatever.
Mhm.
Also, as an ongoing problem, and one that has been declared many times to be in violation of international norms, is that Palestinians are simply being evicted from their houses and apartments in favor of Israelis who are simply moving in and then being backed up by military security.
Yeah.
Well,
I have seen.
you know,
I
I
have
can
seen
talk
those
about
videos. I have.
And
uh,
and as a result, Palestinians have said no, and have in fact in some cases reacted violently. Now, some of those cases have in fact targeted civilians, and while that's not condonable, it is also not something that is unprovoked or unexpected, and it is also something that you cannot simply say is a one-sided thing with the targeting of civilians, because
Yeah.
let's not forget that it has been shown that the Israeli Defense Forces have used things like white phosphorus, targeted hospitals, and have bombed civilian residential areas, all of which, again, are contraventions of international law surrounding proper actions in war, and are, in fact, war crimes in response to this.
There's
So
something,
while I am not condoning Hamas,
right.
you know,
There's something that I've talked about in the past, and I'll talk about it probably many times in the future. How far can you push people before they retaliate? That will always be a question, no matter what government is doing what where. If there is a group of people that is suffering over it, how far are those people going to take being pushed around? And the thing is that it's like if you're gonna have these discussions, one of the things that needs to be focused on are just the hard facts of the matter. Have people in Palestine been treated with basic human rights and dignity? No, they've had their water taken away, they've had their food taken away, they've lost their internet access, they've lost electricity, they are isolated and cannot, like Dapper said, legally leave their space. This is regardless of Israeli laws and regardless of the obtaining legally or unlegally of Palestinian property, like kicking people out of their houses and shit like that. How far before they retaliate? And this is not to say that Hamas should or should not be doing what they're doing. It's if you continue to oppress people, you are going to foster people who are going to be against that oppression, and how those people respond you're going to garner sympathy for it. End of sentence. That's just the way people function.
Yeah. So I will be happy to wholly condemn Hamas for a number of reasons. But one of the things I had a very dear friend who was a member of the Israeli forces, who were part of the first Israeli troops that reached the Wailing Wall on the 6-Day War. He was part of that group, and for his participation in that famous battle, he was given a house in an area that's kind of, well, it's sort of East Jerusalem, depending on how quite wrong. And in the house, they discovered documents and things relating to the original inhabitants. It was a large house, and it had I guess 2 floors. And so they actually reached out to the Arab family who called themselves Palestinians, who originally held the house, and invited them to essentially live in the upper floor. So his family lived on the lower floor, they lived in the upper floor, because they said, we got a house bigger than we can use, this is really your house, let's go and share. And so the two families became good friends and shared this house.
So it looks like your friend is trying to. It's like a line between self-preservation and also like how far are you gonna, let yourself down and your principles down, isn't it? So,
but he was a decent person who said, "Hey, he
that's what I'm
actually
saying.
took the effort to try to find the thing and came back and said, "Hey, we've been given this house, but it's your house, And he first just sort of said they had discussions about it, and they said, "Well, if you want to live in this area, you're welcome to. We can share this house because they're a small family. He was a small family, and they decided they became actually good friends. This
Yeah, that's what
pissed
I'm
off.
saying. If he had returned the whole house, I guess, back to the family, that action might have been seen as like against the Israeli government or the decisions or something. So he came up with a diplomatic action, so it doesn't look like it was an aggressive move towards his own, government. And at the same time, he was preserving the family that was evicted. I'm just saying, like,
But
depending
but
on it, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what happened there. Both of
but
the families are trying to self-preserve.
But wait, but I would say the preserver he's doing the decent thing, right? And in fact, because he was given this thing, it's like, should I move in or not? And that family says, well, we can share the house, right? Was a thing, and this pissed off two major groups. It pissed off a group of people.
Oh,
who
already pissed
said
off. Oh, okay, I
that
was like,
I said that there's a group of people that said you shouldn't be giving Palestinians access to this area. We wanted it to be a Jewish area, and they were Palestinians who were mad that the Palestinian family was living with this military officer's family. I mean, he was retired. But they lived for a number of years in this house until they were assassinated. They were killed by a bomb that was at a cafe, and not only the bomb was laced with metal fractionals, but to add insult to injury, was laced with pork, and it's been linked back to Hamas.
Yeah, that'll happen.
And they were both killed. They were both sort of examples of we can work this out together, and it was killed. Now, what Hamas, and I hear, and I always think, the problem is when you get into the history of stuff, you can say, well, but this people did this, well, these people did this, and you go, what about them? And go back and forth as to who did what.
Yeah, it's been going on forever. Let's just say that, right?
And it's
also like
what?
Generational trauma being passed down from generation to generation. Therefore,
Yes.
The current generation feels that they owe something to their, ancestors or to the generations before them, and feel obligated to continue such a conflict. But like Landon said, just demonstrated, and I had said, people on the ground do not like wars. They don't want wars. They want to live together
genuinely not.
happily, as long as they can respect each other's, religion, whatever. Nobody wants trouble, man. It's these, like, the, if I might just say, military, political, groups, that cause these problems on purpose.
So,
Force people into
these-
conflict. Force them into conflict. Like giving the house was an act of that, like forcing conflict. And then when they found a resolution, everybody was mad.
Yes, because he would go to the wall to pray. The other guy, his friend upstairs, would go to the mosque and pray. They come back and have dinner. They figured out a way of compromise, and that ticked off even more people because.
So there's something I want to point out about something that Landon said, which was about intergenerational trauma and whatnot, which is So there's an intergenerational trauma and an intergenerational cycle of violence that occurs in a lot of places in the world.
Yeah.
Not just on a like ethnic or state level, but even on an individual level. And anyone involved in such a cycle can make a conscious choice to the best of their ability, not perpetuate that cycle of violence. And I think everyone has some responsibility to do that if they do find themselves in such a situation. However, the people who are the ones who have the majority of the power, as well as who are the ones doing the majority of the actually unacceptable amounts of the use of force and military operations, are the one on whom the onus rests to stop the cycle of violence. And currently, in this current conflict, that is Israel. Israel has the military capability to absolutely annihilate the Gaza Strip, and currently, it seems like that's how they're pushing it. And I'm going to say it, that's just genocide. What Israel is doing right now is an attempt to ethnically cleanse the Gaza Strip, and I have very little illusion that it will not, unless it's stopped by international pressure, that it won't end with a significant depopulation through murder of Palestinian civilians in Gaza, followed by the settlement of Israelis into the Gaza Strip. and perhaps even
Wow,
a
this
redefinition of
reminds-
the borders of the Gaza Strip.
And I think Dapper.
It reminds me of something that happened back home
It's
a long time ago.
it's the thing. So the thing that started this current situation was a military operation on the path of Hamas. Right? It was not. I do not accept the claim that Hamas was acting in self-defense. They conducted a military operation against Israelis and against and then killing innocent civilians and capturing them for war crimes, right? And the question is, well, what was Hamas thinking, right? Well, probably they were trying to trigger a response from Israel, hoping there'd be a larger confrontation. I don't know. That's a guess, right?
Yeah.
But understand that what Hamas did was conduct a military operation in an attack, committed war crimes, and what you're seeing in response from Israel is a military response to a military invasion. It was, I do not accept that what Hamas did in the attack was somehow defense. That's not defensive in nature. That's offensive military action.
All right. But Landon, let me ask you something.
And so
Yeah, I was going to
the result,
a little,
but
I
the
guess
result, the result is that you started a military operation, and the problem is the civilians caught in the middle. They are the price for those military operations.
All right, but Landon, I want to ask you something. At what point can you say that a military action is defensive when you're in a situation where people in your country are currently being forcibly ousted out of their homes by illegal settlers, where children are being routinely murdered in the streets by military enforcement officers for the crime of doing things like tossing a rock at a tank, when bombings of apartment complexes and hospitals aren't just something that happens during, the lead up to big ground offensive, but just kind of happen every once in a while, where the occupying force who is currently ousting your family, killing your children, killing your grandchildren, have also been shown to do things as commit massive war crimes by using white phosphorus on civilian populations. Now, I don't condone any of these tactics like kidnapping civilians or bombing buses that Hamas is engaging in, but at a certain point, it's hard to say what wouldn't be self-defense under those circumstances. If you were honestly in a situation where your neighbors who are currently keeping you trapped in a territory smaller than Connecticut in the United States, and were doing all those things to you, what would count as self-defense if not anything that you did to them? They are posing an existential threat to you, your family, your way of life, your entire ethnicity, and they're doing that on a daily basis, including murdering children almost daily. I don't know how to classify any response. Then
I have kind of a different thing, though. Do we care that much about Hamas? The issue here is less. To me, it comes off as is Hamas an issue? Yes, but to me, I'm seeing this as more of a detraction to the state of the Palestinian people. The people and the majority of the people are the thing that ought to matter the most. And since...
Oh, no, I agree.
Whatever Hamas is doing, right, wrong, whether you agree with it or not, yada, 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 fine, whatever. To me, it seems like it's more important to focus on, what is happening to the Palestinian people, what has been happening to them specifically, and the individuals and the groups, as the important part. Are these people starving? Are these people without basic human rights? Yes or no? Is Israel responsible for them not
starving
having
goes back
those?
and forth.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Are the Palestinian people starving out of power, not having internet access? Are they not having their basic human rights? And is Israel responsible for that? Or could Israel fix it? If Israel could fix it, and they're not responsible for it, they ought to be trying to fix it. If they are responsible and culpable for it, then there needs to be consequences.
Unfortunately, though, with Hamas being the elected government in Gaza, it is hard to ignore what they're doing. Now,
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I just mean as a thing.
I'm not going to condone Hamas's tactics.
Sure.
So there's that too.
I mean, Hamas. It was true that at one point there was an election, and Hamas leaning people gained government or gained control of the electorate. But Hamas is then preventing any
2007.
elections from occurring, right?
Yeah.
Hamas.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
once what another says, that's an important thing. Once Hamas supposedly gained control over some of the local authorities within Gaza, they set about murdering members of the PLO
Oh yeah.
to cement themselves. So I do not recognize Hamas as a legitimate government of Gaza, right?
I was
what
treating them
Hamas
as
has
a
been
terrorist.
trying to- and one of what
If
Hamas
I
has
may
been
dare
trying to do is
Finish.
to scuttle the Oslo Accords, right? Oslo Accords was an attempt to try to negotiate a two-state settlement, and one of the things that I fear is going to happen is that the ideas about these two-state solution is probably politically dead at this point, because there's enough people on both sides to say we don't want to do it. Now, the Palestinian Authority and the PLO have been recognized as legitimate government with other Palestinians, and there is some more effective negotiation between the State of Israel and the Palestinian Authority. That is not what's happening in Gaza. What's happening in Gaza is a bunch of militants who conducted a military operation and then used their own Gaza people as shields. And in fact, one of the things that Hamas is trying to do is prevent Palestinians in Gaza from fleeing to try to maximize civilian casualties.
So
again, I'm not condoning or accepting or apologizing Israel's military response.
Yeah, you're talking about.
Let's be clear. Hamas gained control of it's a thuggery, and it has dominated and prevented any elections from occurring in Gaza, and then conducted a military operation, not and using their Palestinians in Gaza as a shield to try to further destabilize the situation for various reasons. And you got Iran's hand in all this stuff. You have Russia's hand in all this sort of thing. There are a bunch of bad actors going on in this area.
This is almost bordering the same situation happened in Pakistan. There was a military government for so many years and no elections at all. And during that time, there were so many terrorist attacks and incursions towards India.
Mm-hmm.
India was sick and tired of all that bullshit. But because I think so, both the countries are nuclear powers, they realized they cannot escalate at all. They can't do that. So they kept on okay, you try to come in here, we are gonna send platoon here. You try if we get intelligence, this is what you're gonna do here. This is how we're gonna deal it. So that's what the strategy had been for India. So it's almost on the same lines of that. And it's about time that Hamas needs to I don't know. Yeah. There's thinking behind Hamas. I know what's the thinking behind Hamas. Sorry, I'm all over the place, but it's all or nothing. That's what their thing is.
The thing is too, right?
But they're imposing it on the local population now.
Yeah, there's this whole other thing. This is basically two political groups. These are two political groups fighting with each other, and then everybody else getting stuck in the middle, whether they do or do not want to be a part of it, like Maanyaa was saying at the beginning, right? We have this issue of Hamas being a political group who wants something, and then we have Israel, who is also a political group, not the Jewish people, a political group who also want something, so much so that they are relocating and dehumanizing the people in Palestine. And the people in Palestine are left to go get fucked, because what are their options? They don't have any.
Hamas is a bunch of military thugs who have conducted a military operation to do what? To get a military response.
But it's not. But we also have to.
They're using the military response as part of their goal.
But
in addition to that,
you have also
Iran
this way
putting stuff into it, and Russia doing other things.
You have Iran. You have proxy wars going on, which are also still all military powers. Sorry, not military powers, political powers. So if they're all political powers, so you've got Israeli political power, you've got Russian political power, you've got Iran political power, you have Hamas's political power, and the Palestinian people are the ones that are suffering for it. So if we drive the conversation,
also the Israeli people too are suffering as well.
Oh yeah. No, everybody loses, right? Everybody loses. It's just one group is very particularly losing more than everybody else. And so if we focus and like drive home that the issue here is a human rights issue, and you can take your political bullshit and shove it up your ass, you're gonna have a little bit of a better time, because now we can at least, I think we all agree, at least within this panel, that human rights are a thing that ought not to be violated. It ought not to be violated by Hamas, which they're doing. It ought not to be violated by the Israeli government, which they are doing, and Russia could get their fucking nose out of everybody else's fucking business.
Yeah, and it's
Russia and a whole bunch of other places like the U.S.
Yeah, yes.
The people are suffering, right? Because again, as I said, you have military operations between the Israeli military and Hamas military. There are two military operations, and the people caught in the middle are suffering as a result. And those people are Israeli citizens. They're residents of Gaza. There are residents, there are other Palestinians, and then other nationals that are in that area as well. And so this is the problem that occurs.
Anybody who's traveled for religious or other reasons, any science people that are going around trying to conduct science that are getting stuck in between point A and point B.
I think so. There was this guy. I don't know who was that lawyer who was during the Amber Heard trial who gave that like surprise reaction when Elaine got burned. He was in Israel when this whole conflict started. He was visiting. I don't know why he was there specifically, but he was visiting Israel when this whole conflict started, and he was able to get himself out. Maybe because of his U.S. citizen status and something. But the majority of Palestinians and Israelis don't have that luxury, I guess. So,
the thing is, like,
if you have a foreign passport. Like, actually, interestingly, while much of the Gaza Strip was under an evacuation order, as if you could leave the Gaza Strip while being Gazan, there's an Egyptian border crossing, which has been closed since basically forever, and the Egyptian government said, hey, we're going to open it up, but not to Palestinians. We're going to open it up to foreign nationals in Gaza so that they can get out. Yeah. Which, like, gee.
It's like rubbing salt into wounds.
But then on top of that, not only did they not open it, the IDF bombed the border crossing.
Yeah. Great. Now, one of the things that happened, Palestinians find themselves not welcome in many Arab countries, right? It is wrong to consider this to be
I have a problem about where the are those Arab countries now who have been by proxy supporting Hamas? Where the fuck are you? Your fellow Muslims need your help. Open your fucking borders and let them in.
They're happy to shovel money. They're happy to shovel money and arms to various paramilitary operations, but proxy they don't want to have the proxy wars. But they don't want to have to shoulder the actual burden of taking care of people by allowing refugees in.
Right.
Now, I'm going to say that is not as big a problem as actively attempting a genocide. So still, I'm going to say that they are less at fault. But on the other hand, it's like 2 million people. The Middle East could absorb 2 million refugees without, collapsing in on itself.
Without any hitch. No, they won't have any problems.
One of the long-term things I think that's going to be a problem with Hamas military action and Israeli military response is that the Oslo Accords, if you don't know the Oslo Accords, OSLO Accords, look it up, 1983, the famous thing about Yasser Rabin and Yasser Arafat actually shaking hands, trying to come up with a Palestinian autonomy and a two-state solution. By the way, Rabin was assassinated by a radical person who didn't like that. Arafat and Hamas was an example of trying to prevent the two-state solution from being implemented in Gaza, right? Who technically got themselves elected and then prevented elections from occurring since then. And the problem is that this notion of two-state solution seems to be politically dead at this point. And people will point to Gaza and say, well, see, if you do a two-state solution, you'll get, and I think that's probably part of what Hamas tried to do. And the problem with the one-state solution has another problem, right? That is if in Israel they had essentially that all people who were citizens of Israel, full rights. Which the problem is that there's a population inversion, and that a certain group could essentially become and outvote another group. So there was attraction from some of the nationalists to try to push to two-state solution. But the one-state solution has another problem as well, which is that granting people in the area equal rights. Some people don't like that. Again, back to my friend and his friends who got assassinated simply because they're trying to live together. I come back to so don't think I'm an apologist for this or that. I mean, certainly, I will condemn Hamas. Right? I do not believe Hamas is legitimate government or legitimate authority in Gaza.
I've also heard
they've created, but it's like, what are you going to do?
Right.
And don't give me but because they did this and they did this and this. I do not care how far back you can go and say, but 1918 did this, but 1704 they did this. Stop that, right?
So I have an idea of what to do. Step one.
Okay. Go for it.
If you are currently in charge of any military forces or paramilitary forces in the region, stop doing fucking war crimes. That's step one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just we can figure out something else after that. We can make progress after that. But step one, stop fucking blowing up hospitals. Stop blowing up buses. Stop blowing up apartment complexes. Just start with that. Stop cutting off water and power.
Yeah, let's start with that. Yeah.
Food
and
civilian population centers.
But in addition to that, Robert, stop launching rockets from hospitals and schools.
Yeah, that's part.
And then think that there is it's because there are people who will conduct military operations in places, have a military response to say, see,
also,
they did a bad thing.
I also want to point out, hey, that one side in a war has done a war crime against you is not licensed for you to then do war crimes yourself.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yay!
Also,
so if Hamas launches a rocket from a hospital, which that's iffy, the only evidence I've seen that hospital that was blown up was actually a Hamas operation has been one, a CGI model of what the hospital could have had underneath it, but hasn't been shown to, and a very obviously fake tape of people speaking very bad Arabic at each other about how the Israelis found out that this was a Hamas front, which was very obviously just an attempt to cover the IDF's ass. Yeah, like you listen to it, and if you've heard people, like if you're at all familiar with Arabic, which I'm a little bit, and if you've heard like how it sounds when Palestinians speak Arabic, it didn't sound at all like that. It sounded like someone who had learned Arabic as a second language, like maybe an IDF member, I don't know, just spitballing, two IDF members just spitballing, having a scripted conversation. There was no inflection. They had the wrong accent. Everything sounded stilted and unemotional, and just like you were reading off of a script in a language you're not very familiar with, but whose sounds you can mostly get right. That's how it sounded. That is the only evidence I've seen that this hospital that was most recently bombed.
Let's just summarize it in this language. Let's see, the leaders on both the sides. Can you just stop? Can you just stop? Go away. Please go away. We don't need you. You're not effective leaders. You're not competent leaders. Please go away.
Neither leaders interested in neither leadership is interested.
Yeah, no.
Right? Because they're interested in doing their military operations.
That's building at this point.
And so I think but it's a fact. It comes back to the thing about the fact that you have these military actions going on, and you have people who were not military caught in the middle. And then you have these like, every one of those is a shield for this other thing, right? Because here's the bad thing that happened. Social media, in particular, that thing formerly known as Twitter, run by that Mr. Poor Impulse Control, has become a Stroinking Schmuck, right? Mr. Stroinking Schmuck has become a cesspool of trolls and of people pushing agenda, right? That's one of the things that happens is that if you have people, a lot of information, take advantage of it for various reasons.
Well, hey, since we probably don't want to stay on Israel-Palestine forever, since I think, at least for my own mental health, I definitely don't want to do that forever. why don't we
Yeah.
leave it at,
That's a
Hey.
lot. That's a lot.
hey, genocide bad,
Yes.
1.
Yeah,
2,
I'll count.
both sides need to stop doing war crimes.
Yes.
And it's not
And,
it's not the
that's-
citizens we are talking about. We are talking about the military and the political groups we are talking about. Just
Correct.
stop.
Yeah.
Stop.
And also, hey, when it comes to the civilian groups, maybe don't actively support war crimes. That's all I ask of the civilians. Don't lend your moral support to
Yeah,
war
no.
crimes or your votes to war crimes. And then,
And
since it's a pretty heated topic, and also we could easily take up the entire show on this, and I know we have
We
at
could.
least 3 more topics. We should probably leave it with some kind of sentiment like that, which is like, yeah, war crime bad, genocide bad. If you're a civilian, don't be in support of either. And I hope that, fewer people than are likely to die will die.
The one
then
thing
if you're
that
part of social media, please don't amplify trolls and other
Yeah.
forces that recognize.
that's the one
that-
thing that I would say, yeah. If you're going to
Yeah.
discuss the topic, please stick to known facts and be very, very careful of misinformation and where you're getting that information from. It's very important if you're going to
Yeah.
talk about like the nuances and the nitty-gritty of this, you know where your information has come from and that it's been verified and it isn't just bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, don't share Arma 3 gameplay footage as if it's actual on-the-ground footage of warfare, because that's been
Oh,
happening a lot.
God.
Yeah. And stay away from Twitter in this particular thing, or whatever they're calling these days.
Landon's
because-
always gonna tell people to stay away from shitter because Landon is a good person.
and so that, because I'm talking about what can you? Let's watch this thing. That there's probably not a military person, probably not in the area of conflict. What can you do? The answer is don't amplify these voices that are taking advantage, seeing political opportunities, and taking advantage of the conflict. Please
Hey,
don't.
President
amplify
Biden,
that.
on the weird off chance that you see this, hey, maybe don't send a bunch of money to Israel while they're currently engaging in an attempted genocide. Just,
Maybe
And-
don't do that.
Yeah.
and stop funding Hamas.
well, at least
and
President Biden
particularly-
isn't doing that.
Stop
I'm
being
not
such
talking about
fucking
Iran.
assholes.
Right, Iran.
Well, I have
because
even less
yeah.
pull over the mullahs than I do over President Biden. I'm at least a U.S.
But,
voter.
the government of Iran, not the people, but the government of Iran is part of the military problem, right? They're one of the proxies
Oh, yeah.
behind it.
All right. I'm cutting the line, and we're gonna be here forever if we keep doing this. All right, I'm gonna give us a quick break so everybody can refill their
Yes,
drinks.
please.
I know I do already because we've been live for an hour. We are now officially finished with Palestine
Hooray.
versus Israel. Please feel free to have, I'm sure, a dumpster fire of a conversation about it in the comment section down below. We're gonna take a quick break. We won't be too long, and then we'll get into our actual topics for tonight. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in like a minute or two.
The
This
actual
wasn't the
topics
topic.
are going to
This
be
is
shorter
just
than
a-
this.
This
This
is
is a
not a
preview.
real topic. This is a pretend topic. Okay, bye.
Oh my god.
Oh, goodness.